So, making a difference with education data, briefly looking what data's out there, how's it being used, and the warning that there's lots of quick screenshots flying up, but I'll put links to everything up later. So, number of questions we can ask about education. Where is it? What is it? How's it doing? Where do we go from it? So, when it comes to knowing where things are, schools data, people want to know where schools are, want to know how they're doing. We've got edubase.gov.uk. Schools are feeding into this. There's education data there. It's a website, though, that to get an extract of that data, you have to sign up, agree to lots of terms and conditions saying you won't reuse it, download your data, which you can only do 2 or 3 times a year without paying lots and lots of money. But edubase was one of the early success stories of open data because it was taken and published in the early sort of Show Us a Better Way competitions. There was an SQL database dump was put up and the suggestion people should innovate with it. We got school maps, we got school finders, we got other things built with this data. Then early on, it was converted into linked data by data.gov.uk and people built things with that, whether it was integrating that data into local mapping as well. Really interesting story here of Lichfield. They're not responsible for providing the schools, but by using the edubase data, they could give their local citizens who didn't care who was responsible for providing the schools, but wanted to go to their local authority for information, they could give that information to them. Really powerful Stewart-built tools that shared this ability with other authorities. But then there's a challenge. If you look on data.gov.uk where this data is coming from, this linked data, it says, actually, the data provided here is over a year old. So edubase was freed up once, but isn't being consistently freed up, and that's a real problem. So it's not just getting access to data, it's stale data, and it's building this whole ecosystem of open data, so people have got fresh current data available to them. I asked people earlier what other data did they want available and things about. Well, actually, catchment areas are another really interesting bit of data that people don't have. Often, as far as I understand, in some areas, they still literally exist as a paper line drawn on a map. They're not even digital in some local areas. So sometimes the data simply isn't there yet, and we've got to work really hard on building the capacity to make that available for people. And obviously, education isn't just formal education, informal education, adult education. Really interesting project. Plings.net have been working over a number of years to get activities outside school for young people data-based. And again, a really interesting story about data availability because they've got this large number, 15,000 activities a week, they're pulling in from the Family Information Directory system, which the mandate for authorities to input into has been cut and the system's being turned off. So in cutbacks, we're losing data sets and losing nationally available data, and there's a real challenge of they've now got to go back to their original route, which was going around every local authority in the country, trying to get standardised data about informal education for young people. So there's some really key challenges about getting this data and keeping it sustainable. So what's out there? Well, again, course data, knowing what courses you can take, knowing what requirements they have. Again, great work going on. Open University and JISC are doing work on data standards for course sharing. But UCAS, again, major data set still not an open data set, and we can't yet make that information available to people. Just put a blog post on the Making a Difference with Data site about a conversation I had earlier this week with a guy building a Facebook application to get young people into education, employment and training, wants to be able to give them course data, can't do it at the moment because it's not there, so we can't take that into spaces where people are. Big thing though, how good is education? There are a lot of this was what someone said to me, there are a lot of very pretty spreadsheets coming out of the Department for Education, nicely formatted and hopeless to get a machine to read, but people have then done a lot of hard work to make pretty websites out of that, and interactive sites. Schooloscope.com is a fascinating example of what you can do visualizing public data in new ways, showing people how schools are performing with happy or sad schools rather than long tables of data. But looking at league tables shows you how powerful data is and always has been in education, how much schools look at their league table results, how those impact on what happens in the local area. So it's not that data is becoming powerful. Data has always been powerful. What's interesting is how it's now up to citizens as well to remix that data and set their priorities. So the government did that. They invented the English Baccalaureate, took data that was already there, combined it in a new way, gave a new ranking. Well, actually now citizens should be saying we can rank things in our own ways as well. So also people ask from education, where do we go next? Employment, careers, another space really key right now, youth unemployment running at massively high levels. Job centre data, there's a wonderful local consultancy who've been scraping this data for years, but it's just an independent scraping of that data. There's not official information from Job Centre Direct, and again, apprenticeships data is still locked up, so some big challenges here. to getting the data out there, although people are using it in creative ways. Creating linked data, if anyone wants to get really technical, we can touch upon that in the workshop later. Southampton Open University publishing their data in this linked data form. Obviously Southampton with Tim Berners-Lee and Co and Nigel there leading in a lot of this. But lastly, the question is, how does this stuff make a difference? And one of the things in my MSc research that came out was there are a number of channels through which data can make a difference. And that question about data being ideologically open data, the campaign for open data is hard to argue against, but how data is used has an ideological component, has some political commitments. Are we using data to support political participation, data to officers, data to citizens so that people can be scrutinising data, informed voters? Are we using this to build new sorts of public services, co-created public services like My Police that we saw? Are we using it like Schooloscope to support individuals to choose their school better, that maybe is linked to a notion of a market in public services? So there's a lot of questions to ask there, and hopefully in the workshop as well we'll explore that. Two ones I wanted to add though, that practical things we're doing at the moment. One is data not just for developers trying to write simple step-by-step recipes that help anyone pick up data and use it. The Open Data Cookbook, really looking for contributors to support that. And next week in Oxford, we're getting together with an event, the Open Data Campaigning Camp, to see how can activists and campaigners use this data. And again, really invite people to join in and get involved in that too.